Welcome to Resilience Unravelled. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Thackeray. This podcast is a result of my fascination with health issues, resilience, performance, mental health, accountability and critical thinking, along with many of the other obsessions I bump into in my life. I spend my time working with highly successful teams, organisations and people, and this podcast introduces their remarkable stories, as well as my synthesis of the key issues, tips and strategies to thrive in life. If you find this podcast useful, you can also find other information at qedod.com or russellthackeray.com. Stay tuned to the end for details of how to order a free ebook. Enjoy the podcast. So today I'm talking to Melissa De Silva. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Russell.
And I'm picking up from your accent that you're over the pond.
I am, and you can probably hear a little bit of Boston in it.
Can you? Is that where you are?
We're right outside of Boston. Yep. So Boston, well, I'm from Rhode Island, but Boston and Rhode Island have very distinctive accents.
Right. Okay. I was in Boston a couple of years ago, and it's an absolutely gorgeous city.
Yes, it really is. Not
as gorgeous as Philadelphia, but I mean that might not be the place to start to have a fight.
No.
So, Melissa, tell me all about yourself.
So I am a mental health therapist, and I work with the LGBTQ plus community members, and I specialize in working with transgender individuals. I own a group practice where I started off about 4 years ago with just myself, and now has grown to 18 clinicians who are running under me. We're working in 9 different schools. And I just published a book. So I do lots of things. And in my off time, I do a lot of art.
Wow. So how did you get into this world?
Well, I thought that I was going to grow up and be a school social worker. And so I had a therapist or a school social worker that really made an impact on me. And I wanted to be able to do that for other teenagers. So I went to college. I got my social work degree, specialized in schools. I did that for about 6 years, and I was all set. I wanted to be able to have my own flexibility. The buildings that we were working in were extremely old, and they were making me sick. So it was just, if I wanted to create a lifestyle that I wanted, I knew I had to reach out and do something on my own.
So when you say the buildings were making you sick, what do you mean by that?
So what was happening is I had this office on the first floor of the school, and I felt like I was getting carbon monoxide poisoning. Wow. And I would come in and I would just want to go to sleep all of a sudden. I would go to the emergency room. They would say, "There's nothing wrong with you." Next week, my coworker upstairs felt the same way. So then we went to the emergency room together. It took us twice as long to get there because we were so foggy-brained. I don't think we should have been driving. And so they checked our carbon monoxide levels and still nothing. So they turned it around and said that I was having anxiety about coming to work, and that's why I was feeling ill. Now, a mental health therapist, I would know if I was feeling anxiety. But I was sure that this office in this building was making me sick because it's over 100 years old. So to solve the problem, they put me upstairs on the 3rd floor with no windows, no heat, no air conditioning. So I was in this cave. And because I didn't have access to the rest of the building because it was so closed in, I felt better. But I couldn't work in a building that I didn't have a window to look out of. So then come to find out during Christmas vacation, we had to move the whole school to a new building because there was so much mildew in the area that I was working that the front part of the school might actually fall down.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had this like sick building syndrome that nobody would believe. And I think a lot of people do have sick building syndrome, and it's hard to detect because, people will say, "Oh, it's just in your head. Nobody else is sick." But if you have a sensitive system, sometimes the chemicals or the mold or anything can really affect you in the way you think.
It's interesting actually how sick building syndrome has become a thing, hasn't it? It's actually become a condition. It's become something that people take seriously now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think with the school, they didn't want to admit to what was going on. Like they removed mold below my office, but never told me like what was going on down there. I think that they were afraid that I would come back with a lawsuit or something because, they were telling me there was nothing wrong.
And it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, it sort of reinforces the point how much our environment around us actually affects us. I talk to people who work in the middle of the countryside, live a virtual and digital life, and they have a sort of different rhythm to the way they work. And you talk to people in cities, and they just seem quicker, don't they? And faster and more frenetic, the whole pace of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're so fast in the city because I'm in Providence, Rhode Island, and that's the city of Rhode Island, and everything's fast, 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 fast. Yeah.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you like fast, 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 then that's a very good thing for you, isn't it?
Yes, which keeps my attention, so that's great.
So why did you leave social work?
So I, about 4 years ago, I started my own practice, and I did private practice with other individuals. We do mental health therapy, so we sit down and talk with people who are struggling with anxiety and depression. I like working with people who are transitioning from one gender to another. And, we just did some great marketing. I don't know anything about marketing, but for some reason I studied enough and I was able to figure it out. And we just really grew really fast. So right now I only do 2 days working with clients, and the rest of the week I do stuff like this and try to spread the word about entrepreneurial successes and working with somebody who has a disability.
So that's interesting, isn't it? So how would you... So what's it like then, being a sort of a businesswoman or entrepreneur rather than the sort of therapist? Do you sort of miss the therapy side of it?
No, I found out that I really like the business side of it. It allows me to be creative, and I'm a very creative person. And so a lot of people don't want to do the business side, but I just really love it. And I just learn so much as I go. It's just been really fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. You often find people going... It becomes quite a sort of how can I describe it? It becomes one of those journeys, isn't it? Where you decide, do you specialise in the therapeutic side or do you go to the business side? It's quite rare to find somebody else who's interested in the marketing and entrepreneurial side of it. How have you found building the business itself?
It was interesting because I knew nothing about building a business. I grew up working on a beach selling thong bikinis to people, and that was as far as I got for learning how to run a business. So I pretty much used what I learned there, like convincing people they need my services because they do, and just figuring out how to reach those people and really narrowing it down to, okay, who are my people? Who are my ideal client? So we just really grew really fast and networking, and I'm really an introvert, but I'm able to pull it together when I go out and do my networking because I'm very excited about what we do.
Yes. And do you find that spending less time with anxious and depressed people has an effect on you as a person as well?
I would say so, but then I also noticed that a lot of therapists or healers themselves struggle with their own stuff. And that's a lot of reasons why we get into the field. It's that we know what it's like and we want to help other people. I struggle with bipolar. And so, I like to work with other people that have that diagnosis so that I can help them through it. So even though I might be working with so many clients, a lot of clinicians and healers also have stuff that they need to work through to help other people.
I think it was either Freud or Jung that said something along the lines of most therapists are therapists because they are actually just figuring out their own issues and practicing on everybody else, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. That's all grad school right there.
Yeah, that's right. So how as a therapist do you protect yourself? How do you build a boundary between yourself and another person? Because that's an important skill for anybody in life, isn't it? Not to be somehow polluted by somebody else's stuff, whether you're in a team at work or a sports group or whatever it is. We're all sometimes susceptible to everybody else around us. So how do you do that?
I think it comes with practice and being in the field for so long. When you're fresh out of school, you want to help everybody, and sometimes you end up doing more work than the client. But as you move along and have some experiences, you realize that a lot of people are more resilient than you originally thought. Sometimes people can be toxic, and just kind of realizing like that is not your toxicity to hold. You're there just to hold the space, and kind of help people work through it. But also making sure that you have your own mental health routine and the lifestyle that allows you to almost like rejuvenate every week.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And
Yeah.
And you talk about a lot of people having resilience. I mean, you talk about the trans community, and I mean that's a group of people that need amazing amounts of resilience as well, aren't they? How do you help them build that sort of toolkit to be able to survive or thrive through that transition process?
I think it's important to remind them of the great steps they've already taken, of just, identifying who they truly are is a huge step, and just reminding them that they've already accomplished something great. And then, working through some of the feelings that they're having, and let them know that, a lot of the feelings that you're having, a lot of other people, it's natural to have these feelings. And a lot of people think that they're the only ones that have certain feelings. But, I see a lot of people who have the same concerns. And it's great to be able to come to somebody who understands like what you're talking about. So I think that it's important to, go at their pace and just recognize the successes they're having, and then support them through the next step that they want to take, and understand that they may not want to go as fast as you, and there might not be a longer journey. It might just be one thing or another. It could just be a pronoun change. So just kind of following the lead of the client.
That's interesting. Do you think this is a good time to be trans? It seems to be a particularly difficult time just at the moment, isn't it?
It is. It really is, because there's a lot of danger out there for people. And until you really start working with the population, or, if you are a member of the community, you don't really see things like they may, such as the bathroom situation. That was a huge thing here in America, is that, if you were born with male genitals, then you should be using the male bathroom. But then that's very dangerous for somebody who presents as female. Yeah. And then the other thing is that the way your feet turn when you're using a toilet in a stall. So if you are facing the wall and toilet, you're typically born with male genitals. If you turned around, you're born with female, right? Yeah. And so people don't think about that until you're like, oh, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually in your country, there's a big sort of move against the trans community with the sort of removal of trans rights in the military and such like. I mean, how does that affect the community as a whole?
Well, with the military, I had come into the situation where I had an adolescent come to me, and they were working through their transition journey, and there was a lot of depression because they weren't living their authentic self. And so to get certain permissions for surgery, you have to have a diagnosis. And so, he had gender dysphoria, but also depression. So then move forward 4 years, this child wants to join the military, and they say, no, because you had a diagnosis of depression 4 years ago.
Yes.
And so they would not accept this person into the military. So it's just like, this poor kid really wants to be able to serve the country, but the country is really pushing back and saying like, no, we don't think that you're the right fit for us. So if it was, I wonder if it was just depression, or if it was depression and being transgender. But it ended up that person wasn't able to join.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I mean, your point about living your authentic self doesn't have to apply to trans people. It's everybody really it applies to, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard.
So how do you define what an authentic self is?
I think that it is whatever you feel that is in your heart. It's almost like you can feel it inside, and acting on what is instinct for you, and not letting society or others around you and put an impression on you if it's not something that you feel is true to you. And I think that can be very hard because we are kind of like cattle. We're herded to where, people want us. And it's really hard work. But I think an authentic person is somebody who just kind of speaks from the heart and lives from the heart.
So I'm guessing you must be, doing work around self-esteem there to be able to help people allow themselves to have the right to live that authentic self.
Yes. Self-esteem is a big thing that we work on. Finding things that you're great at, even if it's the smallest thing. And then again, looking at past strengths, even if it was getting out of bed today, that might be a huge goal, and that might bring up your self-esteem, knowing, yes, I've already achieved this. Or doing something like coloring a picture and knowing, like, yes, I have created this piece of art and it's completed. Just kind of having this sense of completion and some sort of success.
So you create opportunities for people to succeed, and then they can celebrate that step,
yes.
as it were, and then you make the steps greater and greater, such like.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I think a lot of people who are aware they have lower self-esteem beat themselves up by creating challenges for themselves which are too large and sort of reinforcing this sense of hopelessness. And I think you're right, aren't you? It's about creating it's sometimes why it's great to work with somebody else, because they can see that and create a better sort of path for you.
Yes, yeah. And, it can be really difficult, but sometimes even just like almost having a overinflated self-esteem as like a way to kind of like feel a little bit better sometimes makes you feel a little bit better. And, you got to kind of figure out what works for you.
Yeah. Do you think people can have self-esteem that's too inflated?
No, I don't think so. But I think like if you can almost fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
And that kind of, just kind of gives you a little boost.
Yes, why not? Acting as if, isn't it? I remember watching that thing about power poses and such like on TED Talks years ago. I've forgotten the name of the woman who used to talk about that. But, why not? Why not fake it till you make it? There's no harm, is there?
Yeah, and especially for people who are introverts. I mean, sometimes you got to, fake that you want to be out in the community and talking to people, and then know that you need to take a nap after.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out how you can create a lifestyle and an environment that works for you.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? People look at others and they assume everything's fine. But I'm an introvert as well, and I hate networking, and I'm going to spend Friday morning networking. And it's the whole idea of it is hopeless. I really just don't like it. But it's something it's useful. It's something I want to do. Something I can add value to, and vice versa. And so sometimes you have to get over yourself, don't you? And sort of just get on with it.
Yes. And I have an assistant where every time I sign up to do something, and that day I'm like, I don't want to go to this thing. Yeah. She's like, then why do you sign up for this stuff?
Yeah. And so you mentioned bipolar. So can we unpack that a little bit? Because it's some people know a lot about it, some people know nothing. Can you give me a sort of a thumbnail introduction to it?
Yeah, so bipolar is a mood disorder, but I also think it's my superpower. Because if I didn't have it, I don't think that I would be as successful as I am, actually. But this tends to be a cycle of emotions where you will have a period of time, maybe a few days, a few weeks, a few months, where you might be extremely depressed. And then something might trigger you where you start going into like a super happy phase with lots of energy and can be a bit impulsive. And I know a lot of people will use bipolar as in a term of like, oh, her personality just changed right now, or she was happy 2 minutes ago and now she's mean. That's not really bipolar. Bipolar tends to be extended time. And I think that in the past, bipolar was kind of missed. I know it was for me when I was younger, because the depression, when you're depressed. And then if you don't realize that mania isn't something that everybody feels, you think that, okay, mania is typical. And so this must be what happy is. And I remember the moment I was driving my car and realizing, like, I don't think everybody feels this way when they're happy. Just this abundance of energy and having to start projects and, work through the night. And then I realized, I said, like, I think I might be bipolar. And, lo and behold, I was.
Yeah. And it's interesting how many creative people actually have that condition. And I wonder if there's a correlation between high creativity and bipolar.
Oh, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I come up with some great stuff when I am on my high. And a lot of people who enjoy that high don't want to take medication, because that was one of the things I was afraid of, is losing that creativity. I thought I was going to be dull. And, still making sure that you have time to be creative. And I think that's what's helped with my business, is that I'm able to be creative with problem solving. But then when I come into my down phase, I can go home and take a nap, or I'll tell my assistant that I'm going to take a nap, and, she understands. Or there's days I wake up and I just can't be a therapist. It's just like, I can't therapize today. And then, my assistant knows it's a day where I just need to kind of crash.
Therapize, that's a great word.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody out there who suspects they might have this, are there any signs they should look out for?
Yeah, I would say if you have these feelings of feeling down, I almost think of it as like a meh feeling. Mm-hmm. Like nothing is making you like very excited or even like motivated, or you just kind of feel like sleeping all the time, or just kind of wanting to isolate, play video games. That is something to be concerned about, especially if you're having feelings of suicide or just not wanting to be around anymore. It's important to see somebody for that too.
Yeah.
And then if you go from that to, oh my goodness, I need to buy a Greyhound dog because that's really what I want to do right now, which I have done. You might need to realize like, okay, I don't think a lot of people do this. If you're making impulsive decisions, if your speech is rapid, if you're not sleeping well through the night because you're just up and you're like fired up to do something. Some people will engage in more substance use during one phase or the other. So if you're finding there's like two different almost types of you, it might be important to go see somebody and talk about that.
So is this something to watch out for with kids as well? Because if you say the diagnosis is missed, I mean, I suppose people notice the depression side of it with kids, but I wonder if they miss the sort of upside because actually that just seems like having a good time and leaping around the place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like just kind of being aware of like a student or a kid that might be, depressed for a period of time, and then all of a sudden it's just magic, like almost like something's happened. Maybe it was like a birthday party or, something triggered it. And then they're way up, a lot of energy, wanting to do things, creative ideas, so just being aware of that for certain kids too.
And if you have a coworker that has bipolar, I mean, again, how do you deal with that? Obviously it's not about changing the person with bipolar, but how do you, what's the best way to be around a bipolar person?
I think that my assistant, Selena, does really well for me. I call her my lady sitter because she babysits me, but I'm not a baby, I'm a lady. So she kind of keeps an eye on me. She's supportive. She never, says like, oh, you're, not coming to work again today. Or she knows like, okay, I'm doing what I need for my mental health. She's also able to like stop me for a second and say like, do you really think like you should be putting a swing in the middle of your office?
Really?
Yes. Or maybe buying another office is not a good idea right now. So she's able to like slow me down. So I think like if you're working with somebody, just kind of see like where that person is and kind of just support them with that.
Yeah. Yes, that sounds great. And of course helps being the boss, because she has to be polite to you as well.
Yes.
Brilliant. Oh, that's really useful, actually. So you told me, you said right at the beginning when I was writing down your list of things, that you said the word author. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I found that a lot of people were asking me the same questions about how I created my private practice so fast. And so instead of just kind of repeating myself, I wanted to share the wisdom that I learned from my mistakes and things that I succeeded at and put it in a book and offer it to everybody else who's interested in starting their own private practice.
Right. So a lot of people get to a certain stage and they think that would be a great idea. So tell me more. Tell me about the book. What's it called? What sort of things do you cover?
It's called The Profitable Private Practice, How to Start, Run, and Grow Your Therapy Business. And we cover everything from just the social media and paperwork and insurance claims, networking, business cards, all these things that you probably need to know when you start your business. And then it also redirects you back to my website where I have downloads that you can use in your practice, and also have access to me. So I'm always open and willing to share with people.
Fantastic. And where can we get our hands on that book?
You can get it on Amazon or at my website, melissadasilva.com.
And I guess that's, I was going to ask you how to get hold of you, and I guess that's it. So melissadasilva.com. And I notice all sorts of interesting goodies and things on there.
Yes, I do lots of things. I have a couple of podcasts. I do online courses for therapists. I created lady sitter t-shirts because that's a phrase that I'm trademarking. So, I do lots of things.
And you run podcasts of your own?
Yes, Chit Chat with a Therapist. So I talk with other therapists or individuals who have services or ideas that would be beneficial to therapists. And then I also have Pride Connections, which I interview members of the LGBTQ plus community who are changing the world.
Wow. So this is, like you say, it's the benefit of having that uptime, isn't it? You probably are more productive than many people who are on a more sort of even keel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. And, my husband is very supportive of it. I call him my rock. And I'm like the balloon that's just tethered to him. He lets me float, but doesn't let go of me. So he's very understanding of my ups and downs and is just always very supportive. Especially when I said I was going to go to a conference in the Philippines. He was like, "You're not going to a conference in the Philippines." And I was just like, "Yes, I am." And I ended up going.
Well done. I'm not going to make any comments about the success behind every successful woman.
Yes.
That's nice to hear that phrase reversed. Melissa, it's been a joy to talk to you today. And let's hope some people go and have a look at the book on Amazon, which was called, remind me again, what was it called? The
Profitable Private Practice, How to Start, Run, and Grow Your Therapy Business.
And just remind me the name of your website again.
melissadasilva.com.
You've been a superstar today, and thank you for that insight into bipolar. That's really useful.
Thank you. I love sharing my wisdom with other people.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening today. You can go to our site, qedod.com/podcasts, subscribe and see other titles in this series. You can also contact us at info@qedod.com by sending us an email to talk about tough love leadership, accountability, resilience, or avoiding burnout. And if you want a copy of our free ebook, which talks about the fundamentals of resilience, just go to the site and go to qedod.com/free ebook and download it there. Take care.